I want to start today by telling you something that might sting a little at first. It's a truth that feels like a cold splash of water. But if you sit with it, truly sit with it, it might be the most freeing thing you hear all year. Here it is. Most people don't really care about you. Now, before you think this is just cynicism, wait. I mean this as a gift. We spend our lives exhausted, running a marathon on a stage, but there's a secret that a 91-year-old retired librarian named Margaret Olson discovered after 40 years of watching people. She realized that almost everyone is walking around performing for an audience that isn't watching. Today, we're going to peel back the curtain on why your life feels heavy and how to finally put the costume down and start living the life you were actually meant for. Think about the last time you felt a flicker of shame for something you enjoyed. Margaret tells a story about a patron named Diane Kessler. Every Tuesday and Thursday, Diane would come into the library, dressed immaculately with full makeup and a coordinated handbag. She would spend exactly 45 minutes choosing her books, but every single time she brought them to the desk, she would apologize. She'd say, "Oh, Peggy, I hope people don't think I read too many romances." Diane was apologizing for what she liked to read, in a place where the entire purpose was to read what you wanted. Margaret would smile and tell her, "Diane, nobody's keeping track." But Diane didn't believe her. Do you believe it? Or are you, like Diane, constantly performing? Think about today. Think about the last thing you didn't do because you were worried about what someone might think. Maybe you didn't wearing a certain outfit, didn't post a thought online, or didn't sign up for that class you've been eyeing. Now, ask yourself, who exactly were you performing for? Can you name them? And if you can, are they thinking about you at this very moment? The truth is, they aren't. They are likely thinking about what they're going to have for lunch. That isn't cool. It's just true. Compare Diane's anxiety to Margaret's husband, Harold. Harold was a man who wore the same 3 flannel shirts in rotation for 20 years. One of them even had a small tear near the cuff. When Margaret offered to mend it, Harold would simply ask, "Peg, who's looking at my cuff?" Nobody was looking at his cuff, because Harold knew this in his bones. He was one of the most relaxed people to be around. He wasn't narrating his life for an imaginary critic. He was just in it. Meanwhile, Margaret admits she spent her younger years worried that their life looked too small from the outside. They didn't travel much or host big parties. Friday nights were just books, the radio, and maybe a glass of something if they felt fancy. She found herself constantly asking, "Are we doing this wrong?" She was comparing her quiet life to her sister Valerie, who lived in Minneapolis and had a life full of dinner parties and weekend getaways. But here is the unlived truth we often miss. We compare our internal reality to other people's external performance. Years later, Valerie sat at Margaret's kitchen table and confessed the truth. "Peggy, I'm exhausted. I've been exhausted for 30 years." Valerie didn't even like most of the people she spent her weekends with. She had built a whole life around being seen a certain way, and the weight of that performance eventually flattened her. Margaret points out that you don't usually ruin your life with one big, dramatic mistake. Instead, you wear your life down slowly, one tiny performance at a time. It's the yes when you meant no. It's the brunch you didn't want to go to. It's the career you chose because it photographs well, or the apartment you can't afford because it looks right on a screen. We have become the narrators of our lives instead of the inhabitants of them. Margaret recalls a young man in the library in 1978. He sat by a window and wrote for 3 hours. He didn't look up to see if he was being noticed. He didn't angle his notebook so people could see he was being creative. He was just completely absorbed. That is what it looks like when the audience disappears. If there is one thing I want you to take away from this, it's a realization Margaret wishes she had at 25. You are not a character in other people's stories. In the movie of your life, you are the star. But in everyone else's movie, you are barely a background extra. To the rest of the world, you are scenery. That sounds harsh, doesn't it? But Margaret calls it the most liberating thing in the world once you stop fighting it. If nobody is watching that closely and nobody is keeping score, then you can do whatever you want. You can read the lowbrow novels. You can wear the old flannel shirt. You can change your career at 43. You can eat lunch alone and actually enjoy the food instead of worrying about how you look sitting there. Margaret's daughter, Karen, once called her upset because she turned down a promotion and was convinced her whole department was judging her. Margaret asked her, "Karen, what did Linda in accounting have for breakfast this morning?" Karen didn't know, and the point was, Linda didn't know or care about Karen's promotion either. Even if she did, she thought about it for 90 seconds and then moved back to her own problems. I have to be honest with you, and so does Margaret. Realizing that people aren't paying attention can make you a little sad. Part of us wants to matter to everyone. We want the world to stop and notice us. Margaret felt this deeply after her husband Harold passed away. You realize the one person who is paying attention is gone, and the silence that follows is heavy. But on the other side of that heaviness is the real magic. When you stop needing the world to validate your life, you finally start being able to live it. There is an enormous difference between performing a life and living one. At 91 years old, Margaret sits with her cat, her coffee, and the birds at her feeder. She isn't lonely, she isn't bored, and she isn't wondering what anyone thinks of her. She regrets the wasted evenings spent worrying if her Christmas cards were impressive enough, or if the neighbors thought they were strange. The truth is this: the audience you're performing for, they left the theater a long time ago. They're at their own homes, performing for their own audiences who also aren't watching. So, here is your mission for today. Put the costume down. Go be the person you actually are. It is the quietest rebellion there is, and it's the only one that truly matters.